Shalom, welcome to the Jewish View. My name is Rabbi Nachman Simon with the Chabad House of Dummer, together with my co-host Mark Ronish of Statewide News Service and jbiztechvalley.com. We have a very, very special guest with us, Mr. Mark Fleischer. You're the producing artistic director of the Adirondack Theater Festival. Mark, welcome to the Jewish View.
Thank you. So thrilled to be here. I appreciate the invitation.
It's great to see you down here from Glens Falls and the Lake George area, but I wanted, you and I first met when there was some Jewish events, I think Hanukkah and all that,
Right.
when I came up there to see how things are going in Glens Falls. So before we get into the theater, you have two synagogues in Glens Falls. In the summer, you have a Lake George Minyan. So how is the Jewish life and culture in Glens Falls?
I can speak mostly, obviously, to my own experience with Temple Beth El, and we're a temple that's going through a transition right now. Our rabbi has left to go to another congregation in Florida. We have a new rabbi starting. We've been finishing up a search, and we'll be starting soon. I was on the board for 3 or 4 years. And Rabbi Durbin, our outgoing rabbi, has done an amazing job in terms of really revitalizing our school, in terms of bringing in more families, opening up the community. We have an amazing regular service now jointly at Martin Luther King with a local Baptist church that just is really great in the sense of bringing that community in. And the event that I met you at, Mark, which is a Latke Fest that we started.
You knew it was Latke that brought Mark over here.
That's right.
For sure.
Well, one of the things that, we've been talking about this, and we're a small Jewish community in terms of who's active in the temple and the synagogue. But there's a larger community out there, and so one of the things we talked about is how to bring other people in. Also, temples and synagogues have a tough time making their bottom line to keep. We have a full-time rabbi, which a lot of smaller communities aren't able to even do. So we were trying to find other ways to bring people in, and I said, well, let's bring the rest of the community in. And I said, who doesn't like a fried potato pancake? So we initiated this festival, myself and some colleagues in my peer group, and my board said, sure, try it, why not? So we invite cooks to come in and do, they can choose to do a traditional latke or what we're calling a twisted latke, which is people who came in and did sort of other culture an Irish latke, or there was someone who did sort of a zucchini and sweet potato.
Just for our people, more like latke is generally a potato pancake for people who may not be familiar. But
right, and then
there's variations.
And it became this sort of festive event that we also bring in a klezmer band, we have kids activities, but we had like 6 to 8 people competing the first year. We've done it 3 years in a row. We price it incredibly, it's $10 to get in. And it's all the latkes you can eat, and we have salads and desserts.
I had a great time.
And it was a great time.
You did a good job with Mark. I'm sure you brought him in.
I'm coming back every
and
December.
the audiences vote, on what their favorite latke is, the dancing. And what we found was members outside the Jewish community were coming. And that was what we really loved, seeing that sort of mixing and that culture, and we got incredible press coverage, and it became now we've done it 3 years, I guess we have to keep doing it.
That's right.
It's now a
becomes
tradition.
Permanent.
But there is a sizable Jewish community in Glens Falls. I hardly get out there once in a...
Yeah, Temple Beth El, which is my main...
And that's a conservative.
Reform.
Reform.
And then there's also the Shara Tefillah.
Shara Tefillah is the conservative.
Yeah.
Okay.
We do a lot of joint things together as a community.
And the Lake George Minyan is Orthodox.
Yeah.
So in the summer you got all 3 varieties. Okay.
Yeah. And so it's been great. Temple Beth El has been very important to me as an individual, and then I eventually served on the board, as I said, and it's been great. I think that is I think that building was built in the early 20s. Has been there for a long time. A lot of old families.
Just really, together with your job, the Jewish people have anyway been very strong in the theater. Either been players, producers, owners.
The Yiddish theater in New York City started what eventually does become Broadway. PBS had an amazing documentary recently about Jews in the musical theater world, talking about from Gershwin to all the writers, Sondheim,
Marvin Hamlisch.
Marvin Hamlisch, and the influence, Oscar Hammerstein, and so there's always been a strong presence of Jews in terms of the theater and the entertainment industry.
You talk about the Yiddish theater, and when Second Avenue Deli was on Second Avenue,
right.
They had a Yiddish Walk of Fame, and they had stars of all the, and Molly Pecan was one that and Fivers Finkel.
Fivers Finkel, yeah.
So those are the only 2 that I think I remember knowing, But there was, anyway, I just think that, keep up the good work in Glens Falls and getting people together and of all just to let people know about the Jewish culture and ethnicity and what we have to offer. So Rabbi Durbin is
leaving for Stuart, Florida.
Stuart, Florida.
Yeah.
And his wife Rose was
also a rabbi. Yes.
Gloversville.
Yes, so she's going down there as well.
So they're losing
theirs as well. Yeah, Rabbi Durbin came to us as a student. He just graduated and has done amazing work over 5 years. Really energized it.
He has.
We think that we've done a good job for him as well. Jack Hellman, one of my board members, jokes that we're sending Stuart not the same rabbi that we had when he arrived.
Right.
And watching him grow as a teacher and as a caregiver for our community has been amazing. And I count him as a friend as well as a spiritual leader.
So when you go to Stuart, Florida, you gotta.
That's what he says to me. He says,
right.
"Come on down."
That's right.
But he had a growing family, 2 young daughters, and there's only so much that small communities have issues.
So where's the next rabbi coming from?
I do not know all those answers yet because I'm not on that committee.
Okay.
But
but
I'm sure we can get him down here.
You talk about Florida as people go down for the winter instead of going to Israel, they go to Florida.
It's the Holy Land.
Go to the Holy Land. But really, your theater, back to what you do, is that an all-year thing?
No,
I know a lot of things are summer.
We were created. This is our 20th anniversary. We were created in '94 by a group of New York actors, some of which were from the Lake George area. Martha Banta, who is the associate director of Mamma Mia on Broadway. She and her husband, David Turner, decided to start a theater for Newark, to do something completely crazy. It was going to be a summer theater, but rather than doing all the shows it was going to be shows that were new or contemporary, straight off Broadway. And the idea to do summer was, like most people want to get out of the city, because it's not the most pleasant place to be in the middle of July and August, New York City. So they would come up to Lake George and they'd work and they'd create new shows or they'd do a recent off-Broadway hit. But we were also completely professional. We hire actors out of New York City, equity actors, members of the Actors Union, our designers, our directors, our playwrights. So it was this kind of crazy idea that we were going to not only start a professional theater in Glens Falls, a town of 14,600, we were going to do shows that you never heard of, and people told us we were crazy, that they would not make it. And we are now celebrating our 20th anniversary. So
they've been writing off synagogues around here for a long time anyway, and 20 years later we're still around. David King was the third one who started
Dave King runs Lake George RV Park in Lake George, and
that's where you started.
We started the RV park. David King and Martha Banta were high school friends and had done some theater together in high school. And then when Dave came back to run the family business, this RV park, which is not like any RV park you have ever seen. It is the Cadillac of RV parks. He built a small playhouse, and Martha called and said, "We'd like to start a theater. Can we start there?" So we started there, and then a year later, Glens Falls Main Street, there was an abandoned or vacant Woolworths building, and David went to the bankers who owned it and said, "Could we just squat in it and start a theater?" So these real estate guys had said, "Oh, we need to put retail in," and wasn't working. So we started the theater, and suddenly there were people in downtown. And what Tom Hoyle, was then president of Glens Falls National Bank, told me was, we didn't know we needed to create a reason to come downtown before we could put stores and restaurants. And Rick Davidson across the street at one of the restaurants says that ATF moved in, suddenly he had business. And we're very much committed to our theater, but we're also very committed to our community. And downtown redevelopment's been very important to me. I serve on the board of the Downtown Merchants Association, which is called the Collaborative. I'm a member of the Chamber of Commerce board. So we believe that what we do, while we think we're doing entertainment that is, feeds us in an artistic manner, we also think we have a responsibility to our community.
And then the Woolworths was changed into Charles R. Wood Theater?
Yeah, so originally it was just an empty space that we would put platforms and chairs and create our sets. And then one day Martha had a friend, an architect friend, draw a plan. And she literally put it on the wall and said, "What if?" And people started thinking about it. So there was a campaign that was done in the Wood Foundation, which is one of our major local foundations.
He
Charles
owned
Wood.
Great Escape.
Great Escape, yep. It was Storytown at the time, then became Great Escape. He put up some of the first money, then we raised a bunch of other money and converted this vacant Woolworths into a 294-seat proscenium theater for $2.5 million, which still runs today. It's set up as a separate nonprofit. David and Martha didn't want to have, they were going back and forth to New York, so they didn't want to run a building. So we created an agreement where there's a separate nonprofit that runs it for the community, and ATF, Adirondack Theater Festival, has rights in the summer to come in and do what we do. So the rest of the year, the community theater, dance troupes, it's really become a major community resource in downtown Glens Falls.
It's interesting because we've had so many guests on our show, and you almost parallels the story with Proctor's in Schenectady.
Very much so.
You know, like that, Schenectady was run down, you bring in a real gem as a centerpiece, and then from there, you know, things grow.
Right.
Also very much a parallel
I mean, there's
situation.
very much an economic theorist, Richard Florida, who talks about this, who says that by doing arts and culture really is the gateway to economic prosperity. And it's funny because so many people think it's sports and we got to go after the business. Glens Falls, our major employer, is a hospital. And one of their things is attracting doctors who will live and work in Glens Falls when there's so many other incredible places to live. And I think Lake George, Glens Falls region is a beautiful place to live and good lifestyle. But the arts and the culture. And so you look at neighborhoods, Pittsburgh Cultural District, which put in brand new buildings, is a success story. So this idea, and it often happens even naturally, right? There's a bombed out warehouse district, artists move in because the rents are cheap, they start making paintings, someone finally opens a restaurant because they see that all these people are running around, they have a restaurant, then it becomes the trendy place to go, then of course rents start to rise, then Prada moves in, right? I mean, you know, Lower East Side, right, in Soho is the same thing.
Right.
So the artists often lead the way into those creative economic.
And then you have the Hyde Collection, which is a
I
tremendous museum. I didn't know that they had, that they were in the top 10 of museums around the
Glens Falls
around the country.
Glens Falls has got to be a friend of you know, it's this unusual artistic place. So the town, as I said, is 14,600.
You have a symphony orchestra.
Yeah, we are the smallest town in America with a professional symphony, an amazing symphony read by Charles Peltz, who's our conductor, fully professional. You have the Hyde Museum, which you talked about, which is a gem. I mean, last year with its O'Keeffe exhibit, brought in people from all over the country.
So just bring out, I mean, that was like a national exhibit.
Yeah,
national exhibit that went on from, it started in Glens Falls and then went on to Santa Fe and went on to San Francisco. But it started here. And if you've been to that museum, if you haven't, it's a house. They were the daughters of the paper mill baron or owner who built these 3 houses, and the daughters went and collected paintings. And you walk into this house and it's paintings by Eakins and Rembrandt and Botticelli and Monet, and they're amazing works of art. And then there's a rotating gallery, but that's just in downtown.
And I applied for a job there to be their fundraiser.
Oh yeah. No, it's an amazing organization. And then you have our theater, which is a small little theater, but we have had huge impact. You know, in 1998, we did a show called Fully Committed that nobody had heard of. It started at ATF. From ATF, it went to 2.5-year off-Broadway run. It is one of the most produced shows around the country still to this day.
You started?
We started it.
What is it called?
Fully Committed by Becky Mode. We just revived it previously this year as a tribute to what happens. We had a show Murder for Two, which was a murder mystery musical spoof. We did it. We took a chance on 2 writers no one had ever heard of. No one had ever done their show. In 2010, we did the show. It then ran 6 months in Chicago. It just closed an off-Broadway run last week and is launching a tour. Again, what we believe we do is we take these new writers, these new ideas, and we give them a chance. And part of it's because the stakes are lower. You know, if the New York Times isn't coming to review and shut down someone's career, the Post-Star, the Albany Times Union do reviews.
But I'll do reviews.
Right, but yeah, and it's low stakes, but it's also a really great environment. The town, we've actually trained an audience that accepts new work, that is willing to go in and take the journey and the risk. And I think partly it works in Glens Falls because we're a very entrepreneurial town. And I think people have been able to identify these playwrights creating new plays as entrepreneurial. So it's been a great experience.
So when you talk about the challenges, I won't say struggles, but the challenges you have, you know, how much is corporate, how much is government funding, how much is private from private citizens?
We're about, I probably won't go all, I don't know all the exact numbers, but so we're about 50% of our income comes from ticket sales, and the rest is a division. Very little government money. We get support from the town of Glens Falls, the town of Queensbury, Warren County, in the range of $4,000 to $5,000 from each of those.
State legislature?
NISCA funding is about $10,000 a year. And then I go out and I
NISCA is New York State
New York
Council
State
for the Arts.
It's a state agency, which they're an amazing group doing what they do. The arts is a major economic engine for the state of New York.
In the days when the state legislature had member items, you know, there would be an extra bump.
Yeah, I mean, that's,
Ron
and those days are
Senator
gone.
Stafford and others would give.
And those days are disappearing quickly.
Yeah, they did.
You know, again, it's the investment in what does someone see the arts group as? You know, are we an economic? Are we cultural? Are we, you know, feeding like a library does? But we, unlike libraries, don't have taxing ability.
That's right.
So we have a mix. I mean, I kind of, as a nonprofit executive, my goal is to never rely too heavily on one source.
Right.
I'd rather have a whole lot of $200 donors than one $200,000 donor any day. So, but Glens Falls is an amazing town in that it's very generous. It's not a wealthy town. But I'm amazed every time something happens. You know, we have a new library, a new cancer ward at the hospital. We have our theater. And it all comes from that community wanting to give.
Isn't the cancer ward named for Charles Wood?
Yeah,
also?
Charles Wood.
So, I mean, I think everything...
Well, there's an amazing... Charles Wood was an amazing man, and he created this foundation from his wealth to benefit Glens Falls and that area. And he is it's a family-run foundation. We have been quite lucky to be beneficiaries of several things from him, from the foundation he has since passed on. But that was a commitment to the town. I mean, the library has a wing that's the Wood Foundation, and there, you know, not a lot of towns have that sort of patronage.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
And that's been a change in nonprofit management. The generation that used to think it was important to make the money and give it back, now that has drifted down to another generation that doesn't necessarily see the same sort of ownership.
That's an interesting question because, of course, I'm a nonprofit organization also with Chabad. But just the younger people I've found, and people have said that, and I've read articles about it also, just really don't know how to give.
Right.
Like the olden times, you know, that people had made it. And so if it's a fundraiser, it's very difficult for yourself, I mean, to...
As always. I mean, we do a mix of things. We have fundraising events.
What's your
I do
budget?
grants. My grant is $400,000 a year.
You have, but what's the total budget that you have to look at spending?
$400,000.
$400,000.
That's my total budget. That's my operating budget.
That's your total budget.
This year, $395 because I knew there was stuff coming down the pike and I pulled back.
Okay.
I tend to budget responsibly off of actuals from the previous year. Look, it's a limited pool. I have 300 seats. I have 12 performances of each show. I can tell you, what we can do. We get some corporate sponsors. We have some very lovely people, Stewart Shops, Lake George RV Park, this year the Chronicle newspaper, which is a weekly.
But it's coming from inside, or like, I'm thinking so many tourists come.
We're not really tourist driven.
Really?
86% of my audience is year-round resident.
Really? How do you like that?
Part of it's also based on, I would love to have a bigger tourist audience. But you don't go to Lake George to go sit inside in the summer. You go to see the mountains and the lake, and so when we've done a show like Avenue Q or Altar Boys or something that's got a brand name, we've seen a bump. But at the end of the day, that sort of local audience is really what keeps me going, and partly because we've developed a brand, an approach that's very audience-centric. So I do a post-show discussion after every performance. I go down to the front of the stage and invite the audience to stick around and talk with me about the play. Whether they loved it, they hated it, and that's really created a dialogue. We have 10 amazing interns who come from all over the country to study with us each summer, and they're out in the community. And that's the one thing I think our interns and our people who work with us from New York say. They love the fact that this community supports what we do, that when they walk down the street, they're identified.
For actors?
No, ours are all our interns are production, so set, lights, costumes, and arts administration. And these tend to be college graduates or about to be college graduates. So they come, they live in the area. They work alongside professionals. We really take our internship program seriously. So they do a thing called Intern Lunch every year every week, where they invite some guest artist to have lunch with them as a group, and they get to learn about unions or living in New York or graduate school. And it's really amazing to me to see the generosity of the artists that come to work with us, because they were all there once. We all remember, when I was an intern at the Dallas Theater Center and struggling at $100 a week to try to make ends meet. And it's great. I mean, the interns are really lovely. The program is sponsored by Glens Falls National Bank, who's really kind of stepped up this year and seen that there's a need for that sort of post-school training. And our interns go off and
Well,
find
you
work.
also have an adopted intern program and host an actor program.
Yep, yeah. So when I got, one of the hardest things is our actors all come from New York City or beyond. And there's not a lot of rentable housing in Glens Falls in the summer because, we don't have a lot of furnished apartments. It's not the nature. So when I got there, we were spending a lot of money on housing. And so my general manager at the time, Tracy Long, said, well, what if we put actors in private homes? And so we put out a call, house an actor for a week or 2 weeks. And first it was all about the savings, like it saved us about $20,000. But then we discovered something else was happening. That I'd go to like the farmer's market and there would be the actor with their host family. Or the host family would come to the show and be like rooting on this person. And then I'd hear like later that the host family had gone to New York City and met up with their actor in Central Park. And so we found that the actors and designers were learning about our community in a way that we never could have.
And you know who does something very similar? The minor league baseball team.
That's true.
They do.
Really?
And I was a host family for a baseball player.
And so you learn a lot about their lifestyle. They learn about our town. Because often we found when we weren't doing this, actors would come, they'd go to rehearsal, they'd do the show, they'd maybe get a bite to eat, and then go back to their room.
Right.
And they weren't learning the town. We also do other things. We do a boating day on Lake George. We're doing an Independence Day picnic with the Saratoga Shakespeare Festival as a joint. Just again, I want them to come do hard work, but I also want them to understand this region.
Community.
And it also means a lot to me because when they go back to the city, when I'm auditioning, someone says, oh, you got to go work for Adirondack Theater Festival. They treat people really well, and we have a lot of things like that.
Word of mouth and high praise.
Well, I think we have several constituencies.
wonderful.
As a small nonprofit, I have the constituency of my audience, but I also have the constituency of the people that work for me. They're not making a lot of money.
Right. And the Park Playhouse in Albany here has a similar situation that you had. Do you get to talk to, was it Dave Owen? I forgot his name.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know him necessarily, but I've worked at Cap Rep as an independent, as a guest director, and Maggie and I are definitely colleagues, and I know Phil Morris at Schenectady, and so we talk about the challenges, and I know the people up at Depot.
But I think you're closer to what Park Playhouse is doing.
Yeah, and
maybe, so that's why I'm wondering if you.
Yeah, I mean there are some great, and there's a new initiative about a creative economy that the governor and everybody is creating, and we've done some meetings as a group to try to figure out how we can capitalize on that.
Shared services,
but just even capitalize on the fact of how much artistic, cultural industry is in the Capital District is just fascinating.
It's incredible, and that's why I'm having more and more folks from the arts community on the program. Yeah. You have 12 people on your administrative staff.
And production staff, only in the summer. Staff. There's only 2 of us year-round, myself and my general manager, and then in the summer we add technical director, carpenter, master electrician, all the things you need to make the shows happen.
Did you fill your master carpenter position? Because
no, it's just come in late. But
Mark wants a job.
That's an important position. If you don't have a master carpenter, how do you build a set?
We build sets. We're good. We're good.
Okay, so let me ask you one other thing. Do you have a problem? I asked this to large things about ticket scalping.
No.
We
don't. No, I mean, we try to price our tickets incredibly fair. I mean, it's one of the challenges we have. We're a professional theater.
Yes.
In a certain market, there's only so far I can go on ticket price. But I know my amateur community theater charges $35 a ticket, and I'm charging between $25 and $49. So, I think we're pretty competitive with what we get. Last year we did Avenue Q. Metroland wrote that, you could see a off-Broadway version of Avenue Q for a third of the price.
But did you, what I'm asking, do you think your pricing is too low where people say, oh, it's so low, maybe they don't think enough of their production to price it higher, so that maybe if you priced it higher.
I think the challenges in most areas is that, there's only so much resource. I mean, we're not living in economic times are still challenging for people.
Yes.
And I live in a town that, while it may have a hospital, is very, still blue collar and still.
Yes.
And I made a philosophy that I'd rather have more people in the seats, thus equaling more money, than fewer people in the seats because I was able to charge $90. And I make a joke. We have this subscription where you can buy like 6 shows for $138. Right? It works out to like $19 a ticket, right? So something crazy. And I tell people, it's like, if you don't buy that package, you're just crazy. Why would you pay more? But I do have people that are like, oh no, we just want to see one show. And I'm like, you better have to buy the whole package and just not come to the show you don't want to.
Or give it to someone
Or give it to someone else, which is what we have people do. We also have another thing we have called the Angel Fund, where a subscriber can say, I can't make this show. I go, well, you can exchange one of their performances. No. So we take the tickets and we pool them.
Right.
We allow them to have a tax write-off of the value of the ticket, because I won't give them a refund. And then I take those tickets and I'll go to like a youth theater group and say, hey, here's
some free tickets.
Here's free tickets. Come see it. I want people there.
It's very nice.
Yeah. I mean, and having an audience come in is important. Otherwise, it's a rehearsal if there's nobody there.
Did you ever have anybody? You've been there for 20 years. Anybody that's been, made it in Broadway? I mean,
there's lots of people have come through. I'm trying to think who. The other day I was laughing about, I'm terrible with actor names, but we've had some people that go back to New York. Matt DeAngelis, who was in one of an early show for me, just finished doing Once on Broadway and is on tour with it, and was in the revival of Hair on Broadway. We have a lot of people, because we give a lot of young chances to people.
That's what I would think. You take a chance on young people. Some are going to be
Yeah.
Like and using a baseball metaphor, major leaguers, you know.
I mean, I was in New York. I was in New York this weekend for the National High School Musical Theater Awards, and I ran into a friend, Andy Einhorn. Andy had just arrived into New York a couple years prior, and I hired him to be a music director and to orchestrate a small musical for me. Andy's now conducting Bullets Over Broadway on Broadway in 4 years, and it's just really great. I mean, and we have some really good people. I mean, people want to work with us, and I bring in people to work for us that I just never thought would work. I had a 4-time Tony Award-winning lighting designer did a show for me last year. Christina Andreas, who's in a major power, did a show last year for me about Judy Garland and was an amazing Judy. People like the environment, and I think when you support them and we create an environment where risk can be taken and they can be supported and a community that applauds it, I think they want to come work.
Yeah, you got a winning
Do you go out
project.
to the Williamstown Theater Festival and get...
Summers are hard because I work too much to go places, but I do try to get around and see. I mean, I have colleagues at Weston and there's larger organizations called, like I'm part of a group called the National Alliance of Musical Theater, which is a national organization, and I go to conferences and I connect up with other friends, and we do. I mean, I think it's been great to be able to call and ask for, hey, how did you solve this problem? Or, you know, I need and we joke, everything's scalable. You can be, we steal ideas, just steal a good idea, you know. But I do try to get out. Actually, we have one of our actors, Bill Bowers, who's at the Berkshire Theater Festival right now doing a show. They're all, you know, everybody changes. It's a small industry. It's 30 people, and they all just keep changing jobs.
Well, I promise you this summer I will be up there.
You should come up. We have some good shows.
I wanted to ask, I always like the guests to talk about themselves.
Okay.
So tell us where you grew up. Did you go to public school, private school?
Sure. I grew up in suburban Dallas, in a town called Plano, Texas, which is now some major city that has corporate headquarters of Hewlett-Packard and Dr. Pepper. And I went to a public high school, Plano Senior High School, that was a major theater high school. I mean, it was a major theater high school, but it was also a major football high school, being in Texas. And I stumbled myself into a theater program led by a man named John Steele, who was an incredible mentor, and mostly because he, you know, his best compliment was not bad for high school students. And so you wanted to work hard for him, and he pushed us and treated us, you know, and with such respect that we wanted to rise above it. And I wasn't going to be a theater person. I was going to be a doctor, and I went to a small private college. Mostly I just was afraid. I didn't know if I could make it in the theater. And I thought, I'll go be a doctor. I'd had an interest in medicine and science for a long time. Got to my undergrad year and decided it just really wasn't what I wanted to do. And I changed majors, and my mother was like, oh no. And I said, well, now I can play a doctor on TV, is what I joked with. And so, but I stayed at this school. It was a liberal arts college. And I had friends that had gone to conservatories. And I thought, well, maybe I'll go to a conservatory. But then I realized, no, I want to be a director. So I was able to stay at this little conservatory, little liberal arts college where I could take poli-sci and developmental psychology and philosophy and really became, I think, a much more well-rounded director.
So how old are you?
I'm 44.
44. You married?
No.
No kids?
It's very difficult, though, the theater. I mean, the poorness, I mean, people work and they need second jobs. That's what they always
yeah, and I would say, and luckily, I have been fully employed in the theater since leaving college, except for one 6-month period. Now, the issue is I actually realized that I had a knack for the administrative side, that I understood marketing. I understood its role. I had no desire to go to New York City. I wanted to do theater in a community where I knew my people. I love when I walk down the street in Glens Falls and people say, oh, hey, I love that show, or I hate that show. I love that. I mean,
and you have no interest in running for office, huh?
No, that's not my thing.
Or being on Broadway.
No, and to me, it's just, to me, I wanted to be in a theater that was part of its community. I don't believe that it's something on a hill that people should, you know, venture. I want to be in it with them. And that's why ATF, specifically, is very much involved with this downtown. Yeah, it's been a great fit. It's been a great fit for me.
That's terrific. So I think, Rabbi,
you know, listen, Mark, you're doing a lot of good work because you got to be happy, you got to be enjoy, and that's what you're doing for a lot of people. There's a little story, very fast in 5 seconds. They say there's one person in the Talmud they say has the next world. The prophet said, who is he? Is there gestures that they make people happy? So just to make people happy, that's a big mitzvah too. And we wish you the best of luck. And you're going out there, and Mark, we're going to report to us how you like the theater.
Great.
Best of success to you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Everything good for you.
I'm so glad you came in.
I am thrilled. Thank you.